In my previous life, the Marquis's household was destitute. I brought vast wealth to support them, waiting solely for the Marquis's son to marry me. A year later, my corpse was dumped in a mass grave. Before my bones had even cooled, my fiancé took half my dowry to propose to a princess, a dowry weighing a full 128 loads. Everyone reviled me, saying I deserved my fate. A mere merchant's daughter, daring to aspire to be the co-wife of Prince Zheng, the esteemed Marquis's wife, upon hearing my name, would wave her jade-handled fan at me like swatting a fly, her eyes brimming with undisguised contempt. Fortunately, at the most critical moment, I was reborn. As a wandering spirit for mere months, I witnessed the Marquis's grand wedding. In the street corners, an old servant and a 17-year-old maid knelt silently at the crossroads, wiping tears as they burned paper offerings. The wind scattered the ashes across the ground. Thinking I had received the money, the young maid wept even harder, banging her head on the ground as she pleaded, "Miss, down there, don't give all the money to someone else again." How laughable. In my previous life, I lived a soft existence only to have my corpse dumped in a mass grave. Denied entry to the underworld. I drifted as a wrong spirit among the living. Where could I possibly spend money? Thick clouds obscured most of the moon, casting the distant Jing mansion's festive lanterns as bright as day. The clamor never ceased. Countless figures swaying in the light. The Jing mansion's old, peeling signboard had long been replaced by a grand one, gilded in bright yellow and gold. Their wealth was overwhelming, drawing the envious glances of passers-by. The Jings had a guardian spirit at their gate. I tried charging in several times but couldn't get through. My little soul stung painfully each time. What a pity. The Jings used my dowry to throw a 3-day feast. Even the little yellow dog next door was getting plump from the treats. Yet I couldn't even get a sip of celebratory wine. Weary from crying, and fearing I might encounter an even more formidable vengeful spirit, I drifted into the princess's mansion. Seeing the man on the bed, tortured into a half-human, half-ghost state, withered like dried wood, I couldn't bear it. I set the bed ablaze, hoping to help him find release. Unexpectedly, a tongue of flame licked out. I couldn't dodge in time, and my little soul vanished into smoke. When I awoke again, I had been reborn. Tonight marks the eve before the Jing family's betrayal. I forced my eyes open to find a room crowded with figures. Still in this desolate courtyard, the western window propped open. I had only just recovered from a severe illness and couldn't withstand the night's chill. My fingers grew cold. Madame Zheng, the wife of the Marquis, wept until her eyes were swollen and her hair disheveled. "Yun Yang, my child, I beg you like this, please grant my plea. Bring forth that life-saving elixir of yours. Save your sister Yuer's life. Save the lives of dozens of our Marquis household." The moment that venomous woman spoke, memories from my past life surged like a tidal wave. Jing Xie, the eldest daughter of the Jing family, held a low rank in the palace yet caused immense trouble. She had offended the imperial consort, leading to her difficult labor and life hanging by a thread. In my past life, I sacrificed my own life to avert her calamity. Now, she must repay me with a life of her own. A bold thought just surged in my heart. Madame Jing saw I hesitated to respond. "Liner," she called her son over in a tearful voice. Jing Shilin, standing outside the door, immediately answered her summons. In my past life, I was utterly enamored with his fair face. But now, as a vengeful spirit, the sight of it makes me want to vomit. I hurriedly replied to Lady Zheng, "Yes, Madam." Yin Yang agrees. Time was pressing now. There was no room for further deliberation. Besides, alone in this Marquis's mansion, even if I refused 100 times, they'd find 1,000 ways to get the medicine to me. I had no time for deliberation. I must take the initiative and avoid repeating past mistakes that led me to the brink of death. Lady Jing paused upon hearing this, then beamed with delight. She stepped forward, took my hand, and showered me with praise. Good Yin Yang. Good child. Our Changyuan Marquis mansion will never forget your kindness. The elixir wasn't even in hand yet, and already she was treating me as part of the Marquis's household. I had no desire to engage in petty arguments with her. My expression turned serious as I stated, "Madam, the purple continuity pill alone is ineffective. It must be paired with the needle technique passed down through my family for generations to truly save lives." This. Madame Jing hesitated. Can we teach this needle technique to the imperial physicians? She didn't want me to be involved. After all, I bore the surname Yi, not Jing. She was still concerned that the credit for this life-saving act might not fall to the Marquis's household. Naturally, I would not let the Marquis's residents gain even the slightest advantage. Back then, when the rescue failed, the Crown Prince of Jing made no mention of his promise, instead shifting the blame for the death penalty onto me, a mere orphaned girl. As for this acupuncture technique, I frowned. The needlework is intricate, not something mastered in a single day. Who knows if the noble lady in the palace can wait? After I spoke, the room fell so silent you could hear a pin drop. The Marquis, who had remained silent, suddenly slammed his fist on the table. "Prepare immediately. I will escort Yin Yang into the palace." Hearing this, my heart trembled and my fingertips quivered. In my previous life, I had never set foot within the imperial palace. But if I could enter the palace smoothly tomorrow and save the noble lady, it might just buy me a sliver of hope. And the blood feud I carried could be settled in due time. I suppressed my unease and steeled myself. After everyone had left, the young maid Miaoer rushed in, her eyes red, and hurriedly closed the window. The last time I saw her, she was kneeling at the crossroads burning paper offerings for me, urging me not to waste money on others. Seeing this familiar face now, my heart warmed, and my nose stung. Yet my mind felt clear and bright, filled with newfound resolve. The next day, before dawn, the old Marquis rode on horseback while Lady Jing and I entered the palace in separate carriages. "Young lady, time to disembark." Old Young, the coachman, called through the curtain as Miaoer reached out to assist me. Palace regulations were strict. We dismounted and stepped out of the carriages not far from the palace gates, walking to the entrance before transferring to palace palanquins. There was no time for detailed instruction on palace etiquette. Stepping down from the sedan chair, Lady Jing only admonished me to keep my head down, stay close, and remain silent. Along the deep palace walls, I walked alone behind Lady Jing for a long time before we arrived at a courtyard. 3 years ago, Jing Xia entered the palace and was granted the title of imperial consort. Her family had fallen into decline, and without male heirs, she never gained favor. Yet this did not prevent her from causing a major scandal yesterday, offending the highly favored consort Chao, who subsequently suffered a difficult labor. The entire Changyuan Marquis family now faced imminent peril. Only after delivering a palm-sized white jade guanyin statue and a box of South Sea pearls, items entrusted to them by my family, to the princess consort of An, did I gain entry to the palace, escorted by her personal wet nurse. The matron from Prince N's residence entered the courtyard alone, while the others waited quietly outside. In my previous life, I remained utterly oblivious to everything unfolding within the palace walls. It wasn't until I was imprisoned on trumped-up charges and faced death that I finally grasped the truth. 1.5 years ago, Consort Jing, who had possessed neither wealth nor influence, suddenly seemed to strike it rich. She spent jewels and silver like water, using her fortune to curry favor all the way to Empress Chao's Yaohua Palace. Consort Jing had hoped to seize an opportunity while Empress Chao was indisposed. Unexpectedly, the imperial consort was about to give birth within days. Jing Xiui failed to gain any advantage, And in her impatience, she quarreled and argued with the palace maids in the Yaohua palace. The commotion even reached the imperial consort Chao's presence. Startled, the imperial consort clutched her stomach and began to go into labor. The Yaohua palace descended into chaos, and no one had time to deal with Jing Xiuyi. In a rare moment of clarity, consort Jing used her wits. Before disaster struck, she bribed her way out, sending word back to the Changyuan Marquis' residence. Thus, the entire Changyuan Marquis' household threatened and bribed me to hand over the ancestral secret medicine. Saving the consort's life meant saving Jingxia and the entire Changyuan Marquis' household. No sooner had the matron from the prince's residence entered than a palace maid dressed in light green robes emerged. She exchanged a few words with Lady Jing before the sedan chair. Lady Jing then stepped down. Our group followed the palace maid toward another courtyard. Only then did we learn Jingxia was confined here. Upon entering, we found her pacing frantically within the room. "Mother!" she cried out, throwing herself toward Lady Jing as soon as she saw us. Her head still encrusted with jingling jewels that clattered wildly. Who would have thought the Prince of An's influence reached so far? Despite Jingxia causing consort Chao's premature birth, she'd somehow secured permission for Lady Jing to visit her daughter first. No wonder in my past life, only I faced capital punishment. Under the Prince of An's protection, Jingxia and the Marquis of Changyuan's household escaped unscathed. Madame Jing embraced Jingxia, alternating between scolding and caring words. I watched coldly from the side, thinking to myself that this was true mother-daughter affection. How could any my child spoken to me ever be feigned? After listening to a few words from her mother, Jingxia sprang from her embrace and pointed at me, demanding, "Yi Yun, can you truly save consort Chao?" Before I could answer, she barked, "You must ensure the Empress Dowager and her son's safety today. If not, the Changyuan Marquis' household will not let you off. Nor will the Emperor. When your Yi family faced ruin, it was my Marquis' household that sheltered you, clothed and fed you. If you dare not give your all, you have no conscience. You're worse than swine." Lady Zhang's expression shifted slightly upon hearing this. The palace teems with spies. From the moment I entered, I noticed that green-clad palace maid standing motionless within the chamber. Though I knew nothing of her background, my instincts urged me to declare my allegiance now, to sever all ties with the Changyuan Marquis' household once and for all. I addressed Jingxia coldly. Wrongs have their perpetrators, debts their creditors. The consort's difficult labor wasn't caused by me. Why would the emperor blame me? And on what grounds does the Marquis' household still pursue me? Jingxia lunged forward, jabbing her finger at my nose. "You! How dare you speak to me like this?" I shoved her hand away and wrenched the gold-threaded, beaded, and jade-inlaid necklace from her neck. "Does the Marquis' household provide for my food, drink, and clothing?" I sneered. "This necklace alone could sustain your entire household for over half a year." I snapped off a small gold leaf from the necklace, revealing the engraving beneath. "Here lies the name of my deceased mother. Tell me, when the noble ladies of the palace discover this, what do you think they'll find more repulsive, you or this?" Jingxia clutched her neck in pain. Lady Zhang, realizing something was amiss, stood and shouted angrily, "Yun! What has gotten into you? What nonsense are you spouting?" I ignored her and turned to the green-robed palace maid. "Sister, I am Yi Yun. My family possesses the purple continuation pill, which cures difficult childbirth and ensures the safety of both mother and child. I have come to the palace to save the imperial consort from this emergency." "No, you cannot go." Lady Jing swiftly changed her mind. "Mother!" Jingxia gazed at her mother with tear-filled eyes. I smiled, saying nothing. At this point, whether the Changyuan Marquis' household wanted me or not, I had to go. The green-robed palace maid gave a slight curtsy to Lady Zhang, then said to me, "Miss Yi, Please follow me. Thank you for leading the way, Auntie. With that, I walked out the courtyard gate without looking back. In this moment, I was no longer Yi Yun, the once meek and submissive girl who had hidden away in the depths of the mansion, counting the days in foolish longing to marry into the Marquis's household. Dawn had broken. The green-robed palace maid helped me change into a light lotus-pink palace maid's dress, sandwiched between a line of similarly attired maids. I was led deeper into the palace grounds. The hard, dust-free blue stone path stretched wide and long, even with many feet treading upon it. Not a single sound dared to escape. Young General Fong. A squad of imperial guards approached from the opposite direction. The green-robed palace maid bowed respectfully to the brocade-clad general leading them. My heart stirred at the name, and I couldn't help but lift my eyes toward the young General Fong. It was indeed the one I recognized. Only back then, I was but a wandering spirit. He couldn't see me, yet I witnessed him emaciated and tormented, a stark contrast to his present splendor in brocade robes, radiating confidence and vigor. So this was how he once appeared, dashing and spirited. Like the rising sun. Someone tugged at my skirt hem from behind, and I realized the palace maid walking ahead was a full head shorter than me. Hurriedly, I followed the others in bowing, my head naturally lowering. Seeing an old acquaintance was always a good omen. Though he did not recognize me, it somehow calmed my anxious heart considerably. As the last remaining member of the Yi family, no hardship on the path ahead could extinguish the solitary courage within my heart. Following the green-robed palace maid, I arrived at Yaohua Palace, the residence of Consort Chao. The palace was filled with imperial physicians, eunuchs, wet nurses, and palace maids. With the emperor absent, numerous guards had been stationed throughout Yaohua Palace. Soon, I was brought before an elderly imperial physician. What exactly is this purple continuation pill you speak of? Your Excellency. I bowed respectfully. This pill is a secret formula passed down through my ancestors. Its primary ingredient is purple river car, supplemented by other herbs such as Scutellaria root, Eucamia bark, Coptis rhizome, and Amomum fruit. I deliberately omitted the precise dosages and preparation methods. The old physician, well versed in the rules of the pharmaceutical trade, nodded slowly before asking, "May I see the actual pills?" I retrieved the silk pouch from my bosom. The physician took it, removed a pill, sniffed it beneath his nose, then sliced it open with a bamboo knife for closer inspection. Requires a specific acupuncture technique? Yes. I replied respectfully, reciting the sequence of acupoints for needle insertion. The old physician closed his eyes and thought for a moment before addressing the matron standing nearby. "We may proceed." The matron, already drenched in cold sweat, hurriedly pulled me into the inner chamber upon hearing the physician's words. Stepping into the inner chamber felt like stepping out of the outside world's clamor into a deathly stillness. Consort Chao lay on the bed, her face deathly pale, while those around her were as silent as the grave. I felt no fear, for I already knew the true cause of her difficult labor. I asked the palace maid closest to me to bring a basin of hot water to clean my hands. From my bosom, I took the cloth bundle containing the silver needles and spread it out on the table near the bed. Selecting the appropriate needles, I proceeded to insert them into the Empress Consort's acupoints, Zhongwan, Pishu, Shinshu, Neiguan, and Suqi, in sequence. This was not arrogance on my part. In my previous life, the Empress Consort perished along with her child during childbirth. Alongside me, imprisoned in the death cell, were the two imperial physicians from outside. I had heard their cries of innocence. Chao Guifei's difficult labor this time was solely because she ordered the midwife to use tricks to delay the birth. Giving birth in the palace meant bearing an imperial prince, a dragon's descendant. The child might one day stand with one foot in heaven and one on earth, a fate incomparable to that of commoners. Since conceiving, Consort Chow had her fortune told. The hour of a dragon son's birth determines his destiny entirely. She had already ordered her personal wet nurse to prepare labor-inducing herbs, ready to take them when the hour approached. Yet Sheng, the imperial consort, sabotaged her, triggering premature labor. With her family's power and prestige at stake, how could she give up so easily? The acupuncture technique I employed was paired with the purple continuity pill, designed to aid the mother in preserving the fetus and prolonging labor. I only needed to wait for the pill to dissolve and take effect within the consort's body before assisting her in a smooth delivery. I was 90% certain of success. Sure enough, shortly after the acupuncture, Consort Chow stirred faintly. I spoke softly to reassure her, informing her the fetus was safe. Once she regained strength after taking the medicine, she would likely deliver safely at midnight. When I mentioned the midnight delivery, her weary eyes flashed with renewed spirit. With her cooperation and the midwife's assistance, the dragon son was born at midnight, both mother and child safe and sound. As the infant's first cry echoed through the chamber, a young eunuch announced outside the door, "His Majesty the Emperor has arrived." A wet nurse had already wrapped the newborn prince in a yellow satin quilt and carried him out to present to the Emperor. I knelt with the others in the chamber to bow and greet His Majesty. Once everything was in order, the Emperor summoned me to his presence. He began with a few words of gentle praise, then asked, "I hear you live alone in the Changyuan Marquis' residence. Would you like me to arrange a marriage between you and the Marquis' heir?" Kneeling at the Emperor's feet, the golden hem of his robe fluttered before my eyes. His authority weighed upon me so heavily I dared not breathe. Yet the blood feud with the Changyuan Marquis' household sustained me as I risked my life to refuse. "Your Majesty." I heard my own voice tremble like a floating flake of cotton. "This humble maiden is the sole surviving descendant of the Yi family. My soul wishes to carry on the Yi lineage and not bring shame upon my ancestors." "Oh," the Emperor replied coolly. "So you wish to marry for inheritance, do you?" Though the Marquis of Changyuan may lack distinction, his heir apparent is no commoner to marry into another family. I bowed low and kowtowed. "Your Majesty misunderstands. This humble maiden does not wish to dishonor the Marquis' heir by marrying him as an orphan daughter." Upon hearing this, the Emperor ceased arranging a match between me and Xing Shilin. Instead, he declared, "You saved my consort and imperial heir. With no father or brothers remaining, name any reward you desire." "Thank you, Your Majesty." After exchanging a few words, my heart had calmed. This humble maiden preserved the consort's safety through a set of acupuncture techniques. Though unmarried, I humbly request the Emperor's permission to disguise myself as a man and enter the Imperial Medical Academy. There, I wish to impart these techniques to interested physicians. This would enable me to save more women and children in the future, accumulating merit for the Yi family. "Oh," the Emperor's voice held surprise. "I never imagined such grand ambitions from a delicate young woman. Those self-preserving old fools in the Imperial Medical Academy, hoarding their knowledge like precious brooms, should hear this. They take our royal salaries. Yet in critical moments, they only know how to kowtow to save their own skins." Your Majesty jests. I possess only this one set of acupuncture techniques. No other talents. If I could learn a thing or two from the masters at the Imperial Medical Academy, that would be the greatest reward Your Majesty could bestow upon me. Excellent! Excellent! The Emperor slapped the table and laughed. "It is granted. I further bestow upon you 100 taels of gold, 1,000 taels of silver, a box of jeweled hairpins and ornaments, and 50 bolts of brocade. The Imperial Consort will present additional gifts later to bolster your standing when seeking a husband in the future. Is that acceptable?" "Thank you, Your Majesty." I prostrated myself in gratitude. At this point, my revenge plan was already half accomplished. As for the Imperial Consort's reward, I'd better negotiate that properly. Returning to the Changyuan Marquis' residence, The imperial gifts were already piled in the main hall. Madame Jing sealed the silver for the eunuch who delivered the rewards. Sitting solemnly in her armchair. Yin Yang. Madame Jing spoke coldly as I entered. I truly underestimated your scheming ways. The Marquis's residence sent you to the palace. And now that you've received the Emperor's favor, you've cast aside our household. Haven't you? My hand swept lightly over the gold and silver as I replied calmly. Madam, you have a short memory. It wasn't my choice to enter the palace. Wasn't it the Marquis and Madame who begged me for my life last night? Smack! Madame Jing slammed her palm onto the table. If not for the Marquis's tireless efforts to arrange this, you, a poor orphan girl, would never have even touched the doornail of the palace in your lifetime. How could you ever dream of earning imperial favor by serving the Emperor? The Marquis truly went to great lengths. I wore a smile. My eyes unreadable. I wonder if the princess consort of An is satisfied with the white jade guanine and South Sea pearls from my Yi family? When the Yi family faced calamity, the Marquis of Changyuan seized our treasures under the pretense of facilitating connections. Now that Jingxia has brought disaster upon herself and the Marquisate hangs by a thread, he reluctantly relinquishes them, using our Yi family's possessions to avert calamity, yet has the audacity to boast about it. Madame Zhang's expression darkened instantly. Her fierce gaze shot toward Lady Lu beside her, who immediately dropped to her knees in terror. It wasn't this servant who said it. Madam, I never told Miss Yi anything. Do you think I know nothing? Or that even if I knew, I couldn't do anything about it? I picked up the box of jewels and hairpins, smiling at Lady Jing as I said, I wonder if the eunuch who bestowed these mentioned that they were all gifts from His Majesty to this poor, orphaned girl, intended for the Yi family to find a suitable son-in-law. Madam, please have them moved to my courtyard at once. Later, the imperial consort will also send gifts. Leaving them out like this, palace servants might see them and think the Marquis's household is greedy, trying to take advantage of a poor orphan girl. How embarrassing. I turned and walked out the door. Behind me came the sound of teapots and cups shattering on the ground. Already angry? The real reckoning is yet to come. Just as this impoverished Marquisate was propped up by my money, I shall tear it down piece by piece. At supper time, the Marquis returned home in a fury, bearing news that Jingxia had been confined to her quarters for 6 months. The Marquis himself, for failing to discipline his daughter properly, was stripped of a year's salary by the Emperor. These nobles and powerful families never relied on their salaries to live. But the Changyuan Marquis's household had long been so impoverished they were selling off their possessions. They couldn't even afford food, and the entire family depended on me to survive. Before, I was obedient. I let the Marquis's household, without any matchmaker or betrothal gifts, simply declare our engagement with empty words. They treated my dowry as their own treasury. I let them all wear brocades and satins, feast on delicacies from land and sea, and guzzle down dozens of pounds of mist-shrouded tea, the kind priced at 1 tael of silver per liang, 10 taels per 10 liang. They clung to me, consuming my food, wearing my clothes, using my possessions, and even using my money to curry favor with that spoiled Jingxia in the palace. After spending so lavishly for so long, they truly began to believe they possessed mountains of gold and silver. But today is different. Yesterday, when summoned by Consort Chao in the palace, I begged her to grant me a set of palace locks to secure my dowry temporarily stored at the home mansion. Today, Aunt Qian, who serves by the consort's side, will come to help me inventory the dowry. Aunt Qian is the consort's most trusted elder attendant, utterly loyal to her. Since I saved the consort's life, Aunt Qian now regards me as her benefactor. This time, she volunteered to come and assist me with her overseeing matters. I felt immensely reassured. Shortly after lunch, Aunt Qian arrived with several attendants. I approached respectfully and said, "The imperial consort has graciously bestowed a set of locks for my dowry. I am deeply grateful for your assistance. Aunt Qian. Aunt Qian smiled and replied, Miss Yi, there is no need for concern. I shall have the items bestowed by Her Majesty, along with your dowry, moved into your storeroom immediately. Storage room? Where in this home mansion would I have a storage room? My entire dowry had been taken by Lady Jing and stored in her own vault. What was once an empty vault, so bare not even a mouse would dwell there, was now crammed full with my belongings. I kept my composure, turning to look at Lady Jing with a smile. Lady Jing looked distinctly uncomfortable, forcing a smile as she said, "Ah, she's just a young girl, not yet of age. How could someone so young manage such wealth? Rest assured, madam, as her elder, I shall see to it properly." Aunt Qian's face darkened as she rebuked her. "Madam, you speak amiss. During Her Majesty's peril, it was Miss Ye's skill that saved her. Even His Majesty praised her, saying, a young girl with great ambition." She retrieved a gleaming brass lock from a nearby chest, holding it before her as she continued. The imperial consort, fearing Miss Yi might be taken advantage of due to her youth and inexperience, has specially bestowed this set of palace locks upon her. Madam, the day is nearly over. Let us move these items into storage at once, so we old servants may return to the palace and report our duties swiftly. Madame Jing and the Marquis paled at these words. The Marquis forced a dignified response. How could we say such a thing? That Yin still causes the noble consort such concern, it is truly our fault. Madame Jing, with no other choice, gave a discreet signal to her personal attendant, Nanny Lu, and forced a smile. Then we shall trouble you to accompany us to the inner courtyard. Sure enough, she reluctantly led the entire group to the entrance of her own treasury. Nanny Lu, already panting from exertion, had retrieved the door key in advance and waited at the door. Once the storeroom was opened, Aunt Qian took great interest, demanding to see my dowry inventory list to check every item. My loyal Meower had guarded that list like her own life, and today it proved invaluable. Aunt Qian took it and began meticulous verification. She quickly discovered that much of the dowry I'd temporarily stored at the Changyuan Marquis' residence had been spent by the household. Aunt Qian flew into a rage, vowing to report this to the noble consort. Madame Jing scrambled about like a chicken with its head cut off, rushing to the chambers of every master in the mansion. She retrieved every item listed on my dowry inventory and stored them in the warehouse. The portions given away, pawned, or spent by the Marquis' household were appraised on the spot under Aunt Qian's supervision, with their value offset by equivalent goods. In less than 3 hours, the Changyuan Marquis' mansion was emptied once more, reduced to a hollow shell. The Marquis of Changyuan seethed with rage, shame, and fury, yet dared not vent his anger for fear of offending the imperial consort. His face dark as iron, he stormed out, flinging his sleeves behind him. Madame Jing, however, cared not for appearances. Clutching her personal jewelry box, she collapsed to the floor, refusing to let go. Wailing like a village peasant woman, she wailed to heaven and earth, crying out in misery and protesting her innocence. As the creditor, I couldn't very well step in to console her. Instead, I stood by with Meower, arms folded, watching the spectacle unfold. Aunt Qian sneered. Now the lady knows to cherish her possessions. If you feel wronged, go ahead and beat the drum at whichever government office you like. Our Empress Dowager won't tolerate such shameless nonsense. Well said, Auntie. Invoking the Empress. Madame Jing rose awkwardly, her face ashen. The men of the Jing family were truly cowards. The young master followed the Marquis' example and fled. He didn't reappear until Auntie Qian had emptied the mansion and locked the storehouse with a palace padlock. Most of the valuables were recovered, but what truly gave me a headache were the 50-odd shops my family owned. In just a year and a half, Nearly half had been repurposed by Lady Zheng. Some sold cosmetics and perfumes. Others dried fruits and tea snacks, while more dealt in silk and fabrics. The remaining shops, profitable as they were, had their managers replaced by Lady Zheng. The original managers, whether sold off or driven out by the Marquis's household, had vanished without a trace. Though I reclaimed the valuables, I had no way to bring back the shopkeepers. Madame Zheng was too devastated, wailing and wailing the moment she opened her mouth. I couldn't get anything out of her, so I had to plan for the long haul. Returning to my humble courtyard, my anger was still boiling when a maid from the old Marquis's household arrived. This maid kicked open the door without so much as a glance at me and immediately began shouting, "The old Marquis has finished his blood." The lady sent her to demand more from me. Meower snapped back, "None left. None left." The little maid pointed her finger right at Meower's nose, her tone full of arrogance. She ordered Meower to get out before dawn and find a way to buy some, delivering it to the front door. The old Marquis must have it first thing in the morning, otherwise the consequences would be on her. They truly didn't treat this courtyard like it was inhabited by people. Meower was furious. I lifted my teacup and took a sip. The crisp, misty aroma of the tea spread across my tongue. I spoke softly, "Fine. No money to buy it? Then he won't eat it for now." Early the next morning, I dressed neatly, preparing to call old Yang to take me to the Imperial Medical Academy. Before leaving, I thought for a moment and told old Yang to find a house elsewhere. We'd buy some loyal servants and move. Old Yang's eyes lit up at the news, then reddened as he wiped away tears. "Miss, I'll see it done." Meower and I exchanged a knowing smile. Entering the front hall, I found the Marquis and his wife seated there waiting for me. The Marquis, shedding yesterday's anger, spoke kindly. "Yun Yang, the Prince of Anne's beloved concubine, is about to give birth. You shall stay at the Prince of Anne's residence for a couple of days. Once the child is safely delivered, you may return." Madame Zheng also spoke with tolerance. "Regarding yesterday's matter, return the palace lock key to me, and I shall hold no grudge. Before you leave, have Meower purchase some blood. We need enough for 3 months." Have these two lost all sense of shame? How dare they act like benevolent elders, even scheming to feed me blood? Do they think I have no relatives, forcing me to stay at the Marquis residence where they can exploit me at will? I won't let them drain me dry again. I replied solemnly, "Your lordship, I must report daily to the Imperial Medical Academy." "No problem." The Marquis waved it off, unconcerned. "Our carriage will follow you. Attend the Imperial Medical Academy by day and stay at the Prince's residence at night." Avoiding a direct answer, I turned to the Marquis's wife and inquired, "Madam, the spare key to the palace lock is in the Empress Consort's possession. You may request it from her." She glared at me viciously. "What do you mean? Do you intend to monopolize all that money?" Every word she uttered sickened me. Turning to the Marquis, I stated solemnly, "I am betrothed to the Crown Prince. As his future wife, I now reside outside the estate unmarried, merely to deliver a concubine's child. Do you find this appropriate?" The Marquis froze at this. He'd likely never considered this angle. Madame Zheng had never truly intended to marry me into the family. Now, stung by my disdain and brimming with resentment, she spat. "Your engagement to Linner was nothing but a jest between your mother and me, no matchmaker. No contract. How bold of you. You needn't cling to my Chongyuan Marquisate. Go offer your services to Prince N's household instead. Perhaps if he takes a liking to you, he'll reward you with a splendid future." So it was merely a jest. I've been waiting for her to say precisely that. Since that is the case, Yin Yang will eventually marry. It is inappropriate for her to remain unmarried and unattached within the Chongyuan Marquisate. For the sake of her future reputation, I shall move out of the estate without delay. The Marquis and Lady Jing have always believed I harbor deep feelings for Crown Prince Jing Shilin. Unexpectedly, I've taken the initiative to move out. They stood there, stunned. Marquis! Marquis! A clamor erupted from the main gate. A middle-aged man who looked like a shopkeeper rushed in, followed by 8 or 9 clerks and 2 servants from the mansion. Your lordship. The shopkeeper bowed deeply upon seeing the Marquis of Changyuan. The items you ordered from our shop have been delivered. The Marquis of Changyuan replied with a stern expression. Didn't my servants inform you? I no longer want these items. The shopkeeper bowed again. Your lordship comes from generations of nobility. Surely you are familiar with our trade's rules, no returns or exchanges. Please do not put our shop in a difficult position. The Marquis reluctantly conceded. Then set them aside for now. I'm occupied today. My lady will send the accounts clerk to settle the bill another day. The shopkeeper stood straight and replied calmly. My lord, you forget that Huaya Studio has operated for a century. We cannot extend credit. Exactly. The attendants behind him chimed in. Huaya Studio never extends credit. Last night, I instructed old Yang to spread word that the Changyuan Marquis' household accounts were empty. Today, everyone seems to have arrived quite early. The Marquis looked extremely awkward, clearing his throat to cover his embarrassment. He turned to me with an awkward smile. Yin Yang, the lady and I are a bit short on funds. Please cover this bill for me first. The lady will repay you another day. Your Excellency jests. I replied solemnly, bowing formally. As an orphaned girl, Yin Yang survives only through the meager kindness of the lady and my late mother. How could I possibly have silver to cover the Marquis' bill? His expression hardened at my refusal. He pointed distantly toward the storeroom. But your storeroom. My lord forgets. I said, turning toward the palace with a bow and speaking clearly. That is under the imperial seal of the consort. Though it is my dowry, I dare not touch it without permission. Unless I marry. My words incensed the shopkeeper and his assistants, who erupted in a clamor. The Marquis' face flushed crimson from their uproar. A humiliation worse than if I'd emptied his entire household. Madame Jing slammed her hand on the table and snapped. What's all this noise? Does the Marquis' household owe you mere pennies? You petty merchants with no sense of your place, who gave you the nerve to come to the Changyuan Marquis' residence and make a scene? Nanny Lu approached from behind. Madam, today is the day for settling accounts for the household's oil, grain, and sundries. The shopkeepers have been waiting back there for some time now. What shall we do? Madame Jing snapped. Where is their money to pay them? Find a way to send them away. Nanny Lu stood frozen, a look of helplessness on her face. The shopkeepers and clerks supplying the Marquis' residence could no longer hold back. They surged forward all at once. Madame Jing had just berated the famed Huaya Studio of the capital. How could she possibly care about these petty merchants? Servants! She bellowed. Dispatch them! What kind of vermin dare act so insolently before me? Attendants and footmen swarmed in, shoving and pushing the shopkeepers and clerks toward the estate gates. A crowd had already gathered at the entrance of the Changyuan Marquis' residence. Huaya Zhai deliberately escalated the situation. Seeing the crowd swell, they bowed their hands to the onlookers and began recounting the incident, each adding their own spin. A few hangers-on mingled in the crowd, shouting and clamoring, drawing residents and passers-by from several nearby streets. Within a quarter of an hour, the entrance to the Changyuan Marquis' residence had transformed into a bustling marketplace, packed so tightly that not even a drop of water could pass through. Watching this scene from afar with mirror, I thought to myself, old Yang certainly hasn't lost his touch. He managed to gather all the Marquis' creditors early in the morning. The Changyuan Marquis and his wife, empty-handed, would likely find it difficult to resolve matters today. As I watched with growing interest, a voice called out behind me, Yin Yang. I turned to find Jing Shilin, the heir to the Marquis of Changyuan, standing a few paces away. Behind him stood several young nobles, chuckling and winking at each other. Yun Yang, Xing Shilin said, his face flushed with embarrassment. He forced himself to remain composed, but his tone was filled with earnest pleading. I lost 500 taels of silver gambling tea with some friends. Given our household's current situation, could you possibly lend me 800 taels in banknotes temporarily? I'll find a way to repay you later. I raised an eyebrow, smiling as I eyed him, until his face flushed crimson, then drained pale. Fine. I agreed readily. A fortune-teller's stall by the roadside stood empty. The fortune-teller had joined the crowd gathered before the Changyuan Marquis' mansion to watch the spectacle. I walked over, took the paper and brush from the stall, and handed them to Xing Shilin. Your Highness, write the promissory note now. While your friends are still here, they can serve as witnesses. The entire family was now so destitute. It was common knowledge. Within days, rumors spread through the streets. Even beggars dared not approach the Marquis' gate, fearing their bowls would be snatched away. The entire Marquis family became pariahs, avoiding daylight like rats scurrying through alleys, all to evade creditors. For half a month, chaos reigned in the Marquis' front hall. The household began dismissing servants, robbing Peter to pay Paul. Meat vanished from the dinner table for several meals straight, leaving the old Marquis fuming with rage. Fortunately, I resided in the abandoned courtyard, enjoying a rare respite of tranquility. My appetite soared at supper, devouring a whole steamed yellow croaker, freshly caught by old Young through connections. 30 taels apiece. So fresh it practically made your eyebrows fall out. My palate grew finer, and I experimented with new ways to prepare nourishing meals. Even Meower's waistline grew several inches. Come dinner time, I could distinctly hear rustling sounds in the courtyard. I wondered if merely peering over the wall and sniffing the aroma could truly satisfy hunger. Old Young said we needed to station a few male servants in the small courtyard, fearing the Marquisite's people might come to steal food. If they'd shown kindness before, I'd have gladly shared a bite. It's truly bizarre that servants in a noble house like this are starving. These past few days, I've noticed the personal maid who came to my courtyard begging for blood swallows, the one who used to attend the old Marquis, has grown so weak from hunger that even her glare at me has lost its edge. Meower, however, glares back with a fury that could swallow mountains. Old Young, fearing trouble, has gradually moved my dowry to another place for safekeeping. I plan to let the penniless Marquis' household fend for themselves for a few days. I have a more important matter to attend to, for I entered the Imperial Medical Academy to find someone. In my past life, after my beheading, my soul drifted aimlessly, finding no place to rest, until it drifted to the Changyuan Marquis' residence. One day, I discovered the truth. The calamity that befell our Yi family was orchestrated by the Marquis of Changyuan and his wife. Greedy for the Yi family's wealth, they colluded with a court physician to switch medicines, plotting a trap that robbed the Yi family of its fortune and took its lives. They laced our tribute herb, Dagupi, Lycium barbarum root bark, with large quantities of Xiangjiapi, Cinnamomum cassia bark. Not only do these two herbs have different medicinal properties, but Xiangjiapi is also toxic. How could our family, a generations-old herbalist dynasty, commit such a basic error? Unable to defend ourselves. In the blink of an eye, all the male members of the Yi family were imprisoned. My mother gritted her teeth, struggling to run around seeking help, until she was guided to seek aid from Lady Jing of the Changyuan Marquis' residence, a distant relative. After consulting with Lady Zhang, my mother arranged a betrothal between me and Xing Shilin, the heir apparent of the Marquisate. More than half of our family fortune and over 50 pharmacies were pledged as my dowry. I entered the Marquisate alongside my dowry, placed under Lady Zhang's care. Little did I know that once I stepped into the Marquisate, I would never leave. At that moment, I wished to become a vengeful spirit, tearing apart and devouring the mastermind behind this. Reborn into this life. If I do not seek vengeance, what purpose did I serve in being born? Alas, I never learned the identity of the physician who administered the replacement medicine. I remained by the old Marquis' side. Yet he never mentioned the matter again, nor did he reveal a single clue in his conversations with the physicians. I knew the Emperor would not allow me to linger long in the Imperial Medical Academy. Now, I must find that physician swiftly. After 10 days, I had familiarized myself with nearly everyone in the Imperial Medical Academy, from the chief physician down to the junior medicine boys. Finally, 2 individuals made my list of suspects. The first was physician's son. From what I gathered, after the Yi family incident, the royal pharmacy had reevaluated its suppliers of Sinancomatratum. The new supplier had been recommended by this very physician's son. Whether this new supplier had private dealings with physician's son remained unclear. The relationship was too recent for me to uncover. The second suspect was Li, the supervisor of the pharmacy bureau. Though his official rank was low, he wielded substantial power. He had held this position for 3 years, turning down opportunities for promotion. It was he who had discovered the large quantities of fragrant bark mixed into the lithium bark supplied by the Yi family. Of these 2, my suspicions rest more heavily on physician's son. After my death in my previous life, Jing Shilin married the young Princess Yongjia, who enjoyed immense imperial favor, and his status reached its zenith. I recall that the physician attending to the Marquis' household was Sun, who had since been promoted to director of the Imperial Medical Academy. Yet now, he is merely an obscure, ordinary court physician, without powerful patrons secretly backing him. Given physician's son's abilities, it would have been nearly impossible for him to rise to director within just a few short years. Yishur was pondering physician's son when he summoned me, asking me to accompany him to the general's residence. Since I arrived at the Imperial Medical Academy, none have been more delighted than the physicians specializing in gynecology. When physicians treat women, the gender barrier often makes their efforts feel like striking at a target from afar. Though I knew little of medicine beyond my acupuncture techniques, my background in a family of herbalists gave me a basic understanding of pharmacology. Having me assist made things considerably smoother. I'd been looking for an opportunity to interact more with physician's son. Without hesitation, I grabbed my silver needles and followed him. We entered the general's residence. Only then did I learn the young mistress was in labor. But the delivery was not going smoothly. Many people stood in the young mistress's courtyard. Screams of pain echoed from the room. Upon seeing physician's son, the courtyard crowd hastily parted to make way. I followed behind with the medicine boy. As we reached the doorway, I spotted a familiar face. Strange as it may seem, this was the second time I'd seen him since my rebirth. It was Feng Zhongye, the second son of the general's household, the young mistress's younger brother-in-law, known to all as the young general. Seeing him, I suddenly realized this was the residence of the Northern Frontier General, a title personally bestowed by His Majesty. My heart skipped a beat. The Northern Frontier General had 2 sons, the eldest, Feng Boxu, and the younger, Feng Zhongye. This spring, the eldest son, Feng Boxu, was killed in action while defending the Northern Pass. The old general himself was gravely wounded and remains bedridden to this day. The woman in labor now was the general's eldest daughter-in-law, carrying Feng Boxu's posthumous child. In my previous life, the eldest daughter-in-law died during a difficult delivery of twins, taking 3 lives with her. The old general's wife fainted on the spot, while the old general, overcome with grief, cried out in anguish and died from coughing up blood. Young General Feng Zhongye lost all his loved ones in a single night. While arranging the funeral for his father and sister-in-law, clad in mourning robes, he caught the eye of Princess Jingyi, who had come to pay her respects. The very next day, He was forcibly taken to the princess's residence, becoming her captive. Princess Jinyi took great delight in collecting male favorites, seizing any she desired regardless of background. Court officials dared not speak out. With the old general dead and his influence waning, no one dared intervene. Fang Zhongye possessed martial arts skills, making it impossible for the princess to force him. Unwilling to drug him unconscious, she bound him daily and subjected him to every form of torture. While wandering, I found him in a secluded courtyard. He'd been imprisoned for years, his body covered in wounds, emaciated to the point of visible bones. Watching him from afar, my heart ached. I, a lowly orphaned girl, was bullied to death. Yet he, the second son of a distinguished general's household, a man of extraordinary skill, had fallen into such a state. Neither fully human nor ghost. Where in this corrupt world could justice and fairness be found? Later, on the day of the Jing family's grand wedding, I picked up a long thread, lit its end, and went to burn the ropes binding him. Unexpectedly, the fire consumed not just the ropes but engulfed the entire room in scorching flames. Thrilled, I planned to use this method to burn down the Marquis of Changyuan's residence. But in an instant, I dissolved and reborn amidst the heat wave. Now, I had escaped the fate of beheading. The young general before me was consumed with worry for his elder sister-in-law and his nieces and nephews. Utterly unaware of the tragic fate awaiting him ahead, I passed by Fang Zhongye and followed physician's son into the front hall, where the young mistress's cries of pain grew ever clearer. I resolved to meddle in a matter unrelated to vengeance today. Persuading the general's household to let me deliver the young mistress's child proved difficult. First, I held no official rank. Though I had assisted Imperial Consort Chao in a successful delivery, I was not a skilled physician. Among the capital's elite, this achievement was merely gossip. Few would dare entrust me with sole responsibility for delivery. Second, the young mistress's husband had passed away. This child was a posthumous offspring, its preciousness beyond measure. Third, I alone knew this child might never be born, and that its failure to arrive would bring ruin upon the entire general's household. They were unaware of the gravity, and I could not reveal it. Imperial physician's son sent me into the inner chamber to examine the young mistress's condition. It was indeed dire. Signs pointed to premature placental abruption. Delay would suffocate the fetus within the womb. The midwives and medical attendants gathered around the young mistress, along with physician's son outside. All understood the risks. They relayed the situation to the old general's wife. Her face instantly drained of color as she pleaded with the physician to find a way to save her. I had no time to think. I stepped forward, ushering physician's son and the old general's wife aside. I explained the pharmacological properties of the purple continuity pill in detail to both of them. Purple continuity pill relies on the fetal membrane as its primary ingredient. It proves effective when administered to those sharing blood ties with the mother, with the mother herself naturally yielding the strongest efficacy. However, my ancestors always prepared this medicine in advance, passing it down through generations, rarely crafting it on short notice. If physician's son could employ my acupuncture technique to delay the young mistress's labor, buying me time to prepare the purple continuity pill, her delivery could proceed without peril. After hearing this, physician's son lowered his eyes in deep thought. The general's wife, unfamiliar with medicine, hesitated to agree. Suddenly, Fang Zhongye, who had arrived unnoticed, spoke up. "Mother, our elder sister-in-law is in grave danger. We must act decisively. There is no better solution now. Missy has no familial ties or prior connection with us. She would not propose this unless she had absolute confidence. Let us give it a try." The old general's wife still hesitated, her gaze drifting toward the elderly General Fang lying in the corner outside the courtyard. Fang Zhongye turned to me with a bow. "Miss Yi, what herbs and tools are needed to prepare this elixir?" "I shall go prepare them at once," Scutellaria root, Eucomia bark, Coptis rhizome, Amomum fruit. I listed each required herb to Feng Zhongye, specifying that I needed a quiet room and a medicinal cauldron. Dr. Sun, unable to devise a safer treatment method, took my silver needles into the inner chamber. With the midwife's assistance, he performed acupuncture on the young mistress. Meanwhile, Feng Zhongye led me to an empty room. This was where my eldest brother practiced martial arts during snowy days. He looked at me. His bright eyes slightly reddened. Miss Yi will prepare the medicine here. I'll bring the herbs and tools immediately. He personally delivered them soon after, then stood guard outside the door, not allowing anyone to approach. I had already cut a portion of the placenta from beneath the young mistress. Following the steps my mother had personally taught me in childhood, I proceeded step by step with the preparation. Back then, I had stubbornly refused to learn, complaining it was dirty, exhausting, scalding, and the pungent medicinal smell was unbearable. Yet my mother, who indulged me in everything, was strict with me only on this matter. She forced me, crying and sniffling, to make the elixir over and over again, only letting me go when I achieved 9 out of 10 successful attempts. As I prepared the medicine, I thought of my mother's words. The purple continuity pill is passed from mother to daughter, unbound by clan or lineage, untouched by power or ambition. Only bloodline remains our greatest lifeline. Yin Yang, master this art. Even if I am no longer here, you will find peace in this world. The cauldron burned fiercely, its vapors rising thick. My eyes stung, yet no tears remained. Perhaps it was Feng Box's spirit watching over me from the heavens. Or perhaps Feng Zhongye had procured only the finest herbs. In my haste, I succeeded in refining the elixir in one attempt. I dissolved it in yellow wine and fed it to the young mistress. I performed the acupuncture procedure once more. After removing the needles, the babies were born, a boy and a girl, both as pure and lovely as jade. The general's residence erupted in jubilant celebration. The steward led a group of young servants to set off firecrackers and scatter copper coins at the gate. As the flames flickered, I realized it was already the second watch of the night. The window outside as dark as ink. Imperial physician's son had departed home with his medical apprentice, escorted by the old general's wife's personal wet nurse. I changed into clean garments. Stepping outside, I found Feng Zhongye waiting in the courtyard. Miss Yi, he approached softly. The heir of the Changyuan Marquis arrived a quarter of an hour ago, requesting to escort you back. He is currently waiting in the front hall. I pressed my swollen forehead, wondering what Jing Shilin intended. Though he coveted my family's wealth, he had always set his sights on marrying Princess Yongjia. He would never publicly acknowledge any connection to me. Perhaps because that promissory note was forced upon him by the Marquis of Changyuan, he had no choice but to come. He chose this late hour when few were about, merely to make a show. I did not wish to comply with his wishes. Second young master. I bowed to Feng Zhongye, exhausted beyond measure. I wished to rest for a few hours in the room where I had just prepared the medicine. Could second young master kindly inform the Changyuan Marquis' heir that I would proceed directly to the Imperial Medical Institute at dawn, sparing him the trouble? Feng Zhongye nodded. I'll inform him. He then summoned a maid to guide me, turning with a sharp, agile motion as he strode purposefully toward the exit. The eldest son's training room remained exactly as I'd left it after preparing the medicine. On the makeshift table, medicinal herbs lay scattered in disarray. The cauldron's fire had died out, and the air was thick with the lingering scent of herbs scorched by the flames. An elderly nurse arrived with several maidservants, carrying a small table laden with 4 plates of simple vegetables, 4 kinds of pastries, and a steaming bowl of soup. They informed me a bed had been prepared in the adjacent room for my temporary rest. I thanked them, though my appetite was entirely gone. After tidying the herbs and cauldron, I took the jar of yellow wine meant for the young mistress and leaned against the small table, sipping it slowly, mouthful by mouthful. The third watch drum had sounded, and the moon's shadow shifted westward. Through the window, I could see the moonlight on the courtyard's blue stone slabs, white as autumn frost. I pushed open the window and leaned out, meeting Feng Zhongye's eyes before he could look away. Miss Yi. Seeing I'd noticed him, Feng Zhongye stepped closer to the window. Why haven't you rested so late? Is the mansion too noisy? Noticing the wine flask in my arms, he added, had I known you enjoyed wine, I would have sent a jar of Shashing 10-month snow. That brew is perfect for a lady, fragrant and mellow. This is quite sufficient. I declined with a smile. I've never tasted wine myself, but I've seen my father and mother drink from flasks like this, holding that same golden hue. Thank you for saving my elder sister-in-law and my nephew today, he murmured. It was not the young mistress's time to die, I replied. The purple continuity pill can only be made from the placenta of a female fetus. Had the young mistress not been carrying twins, one male, one female, or suffered from premature placental detachment, even I could have done nothing. I hear the purple continuity pill is a secret remedy of your family. I smiled at him. Not anymore. Feng Zhongye looked uneasy. Speaking earnestly, the general's household cannot repay your great kindness, young lady. I looked at him, this youth, spirited and imposing, with sword-like brows and starry eyes. I asked, General, do you truly wish to repay this debt? Feng Zhongye paused, then nodded. Whatever the young lady requires of this humble servant, I shall do my utmost. Don't wear white clothes anymore, I said. What? His eyes widened, as if he'd misheard. Yes. I nodded, repeating myself. No matter what happens. For 10 years. I looked at his features, moonlight casting a captivating glow on his striking face. I amended myself, make it 20 years. For 20 years. Don't wear white garments. That is the repayment I seek. Why? Because, well, white doesn't suit you. When you last saw me, Feng was not wearing white. Nor am I tonight. How can you say white doesn't suit me? Last saw me? My eyes widened. Where was this coming from? Did he also possess memories from a past life? But even if so, back then he was a man and I was a spirit, he couldn't possibly have seen my form. My astonishment must have been too obvious. For Feng Zhongye's eyes twinkled with amusement as he said, when I was on duty in the palace, I'd always see a sea of dark heads among the palace servants. Only your eyes would fix on me. How come you seem to have forgotten all that today? So he was referring to the day I entered the palace. I hadn't realized my 2 glances at him were so obvious. Oh. I remember. I mumbled, trying to gloss over it. Then why did you say I didn't look good in white? Feng Zhongye pressed on relentlessly. My ears burned. Lying was truly difficult. Second young master, have you no intention of repaying your debt of gratitude? Of course not. Then it's settled. I set down the wine flask and closed the window. At dawn, the general's residence sent a carriage to take me to the Imperial Medical Institute. I feigned discussion with physician's son about the previous day's medication and acupuncture techniques, aiming to build rapport with him. For the next few days, I followed him as closely as possible. I had considered that if he truly was the one who harmed my Yi family years ago, he would surely recognize my identity and guard against me. Yet his attitude toward me showed no hint of suspicion. When I followed him to the pharmacy to inspect the medicines, he offered no resistance. The pharmacy wasn't far from the Imperial Medical Academy, but inside, it was a world apart. The imperial physicians had a certain fastidiousness about cleanliness. The Imperial Medical Academy, from its layout to its furnishings, was spotless, orderly, and meticulously organized. The pharmacy, however, was vast and chaotic. Medicinal ingredients of all kinds, some in boxes, some in sacks, were piled upon wooden shelves. Pharmacists and apprentices bustled about, preparing and processing the herbs. Along both sides of the main hall stretched rows of uniformly sized compartments. Some doors were closed, others open, each bearing a wooden plaque indicating its purpose. Following physician's son inside, he instructed an apprentice to take him to inspect the newly arrived phytotractalodes and herbaeupatorium. Taking advantage of their distraction, I slipped along the row of cubicles toward the inner chambers. I had inquired beforehand, the farthest cubicle belonged to Supervisor Lee. His absence today meant I'd have little chance to linger in the dispensary. I had to get inside and take a look. Superintendent Lee's door wasn't locked. I pushed it open quietly and found the room empty. It wasn't large. A desk stood in the center, and against the wall ran a row of wooden shelves holding numerous herbal specimens. Clearly visible, behind the shelves stood a low cabinet. I approached it. The door was locked. Impossible to open, but I managed to pry open a small crack. Peering through the gap, I saw inside. The interior was too dim to make out much, but a corner of an ornament caught the light. It bore an uncanny resemblance to the jade rabbit mortar from my family's moon palace. My heart raced. I wanted to pick the lock and open the cabinet for a closer look. Suddenly, footsteps grew louder outside the door. Abandoning my plan, I glanced around frantically. Finding nowhere to hide, I pulled out the window's locking pin. As I pushed the window open, a figure stood directly before me, startling me into a near scream. It was Fang Zhongye, the second son of the general's household. He clamped his hand over my mouth while grabbing my sash with his other hand. With one swift pull, he hauled me out the window. Shouldering the window shut, he dragged me toward a resting pavilion behind the pharmacy. He set me down, and I sat on the stone bench, still trembling. "What are you looking for?" he whispered. I remained silent. I didn't know what I could find, and even if I did, I couldn't tell him. "Are you searching for evidence to clear your Yi family's name?" he pressed. Startled, I looked up at him. "You've investigated me? I had to know why you wouldn't let me wear white." He sat down across from me. "You found out?" "Not really." He scratched his head sheepishly. I watched his thick, dark hair, neatly tied back, and recalled how it had hung limp and lifeless in the princess's mansion in his past life. Sighing, I changed my mind. In that room earlier, there was a green jade ornament in the cabinet. It resembles the jade pestle from my family. Could the second young master retrieve it without alerting anyone? "Stay here and don't move." Fang Zhongye gave the instruction before rising to leave. In less than half a cup of tea's time, he returned cradling an object in his arms, placing it on the stone table. I picked up this jade rabbit mortar from the Moon Palace. Reaching to touch the base of its feet, a tiny leaf character was carved there. A trickle of coolness welled up in my eyes. I raised my hand to wipe my cheek, dry. Nothing there. Fang Zhongye sat silently beside me for a moment before reaching out to take the pestle back. He fixed his gaze on me. "Is it from your Yi family? I'll handle this for you." 10 days later, evidence surfaced, a ledger from the Changyuan Marquis' estate, detailing the purchase of large quantities of fragrant cinnamon bark delivered to Imperial Apothecary Li over a year and a half prior, followed by gifts to Li, a crate of jade artifacts and jewels, and another crate of rare medicinal herbs, all proven to be Yi family treasures. Fang Zhongye had uncovered these documents and presented them to me. I had assumed Imperial Physician's son was colluding with the Changyuan Marquis. But unexpectedly, it was this obscure, low-ranking Imperial Apothecary Li. Who knows how many times this medical supervisor has pulled such stunts? How many families he's ruined? He holds no regard for common merchants like us. He brazenly displays his ill-gotten gains in his cabinets, utterly unconcerned about being discovered. My heart feels like it's being sliced open with a sharp blade. What do you intend to do? Fang Zhongye asked me. Go to the Supreme Court of Justice and beat the drum to appeal my grievance. My gaze was sharp, my resolve unwavering. This day I had longed for across 2 lifetimes. I would not only make the Marquis of Changyuan's household and Li the medical supervisor pay with their lives, reclaiming what rightfully belonged to the Yi family, but I would also clear the Yi family's name, restoring the honor of my ancestors. Fang Zhongye frowned. Drumming for justice carries 20 lashes. He looked at me with concern. You won't endure it. As long as I don't die, I can endure it. This fleshly pain is insignificant compared to the agony of losing loved ones in both my past and present lives. Let me help you, Fang Zhongye offered. I shook my head. It's unnecessary. The second young master has already resolved my greatest hardship. The rest I can handle myself. Nothing compares to the debt of saving a life. He fixed me with a resolute gaze, his eyes gleaming with intensity. For a moment, I was lost in a flicker of confusion, almost believing he remembered my past life, how I had accompanied and aided him as a spirit. You saved my elder sister-in-law, nephew, and niece, he said slowly. With my elder brother recently passed. Had those 3 met harm, my father, in his wounded state, would never have endured the grief. The general's household owes you 4 lives. He gave me no chance to protest, taking the evidence he brought back with him to submit to the Ministry of Justice the next day. Under the general's household's authority, the Yi family's wrongful conviction was retried. Yin Yang. Lady Jing sat beside me, dabbing her tears with a silk handkerchief as she wept bitterly. How could I have known my second uncle would be so blinded by greed, committing such a vile act? It's despicable that neither I nor the Marquis knew anything about it. In our carelessness, we unwittingly caused the deaths of your parents and grandparents. I watched her coldly, letting her perform this one-woman show. To think the Marquis's household had sunk to such shameless depths. The Supreme Court re-examined the Yi family's case of adulterating licorice root with cinnamon bark, re-examining witnesses and physical evidence. Ultimately, the entire Yi clan was acquitted, their confiscated property returned. The Marquis of Changyuan's household and imperial pharmacist Li were imprisoned for the crime of false accusation leading to death. The principal offender faced capital punishment, to be executed after the autumn harvest. The evidence had been irrefutable. Yet, astonishingly, the Marquis and his wife managed to shift the blame onto the second branch of the family. It was indeed the Marquis's own younger brother who had handled the procurement of medicinal herbs, exchanged the medicine chests, and delivered the bribes to imperial pharmacist Li's household. All household affairs were managed by the second branch's master. How could the Marquis of Changyuan, bearing his noble title, personally handle such trivial clan matters? Yet without the Marquis's involvement, the second branch held no authority or position. How could they possibly orchestrate such a scheme to profit through murder? I clenched my fists tightly, my nails digging into my flesh without feeling the pain. I refused to accept this. This was not the outcome I desired. Madame Jing wept for a long while, but seeing my stony face in silence, she finally stopped. Yin Yang. The second branch committed such a heinous crime. The Marquis has said that even if it were his own flesh and blood, he would never plead for leniency or indulgence. She reached to take my hand, but I calmly avoided her touch and went to pick up the teacup from the table. Madame Jing sighed. Yin Yang. I know you must blame me and the Marquis. Rest assured, you will be the heir's wife in this household. When Lin inherits the Marquisate, you shall be the Lady of Changyuan. With the Marquis and me standing behind you, no one in the capital will dare look down on you. Madam. I set down the teacup. Never mind that you once claimed our betrothal was but a jest. Even if your Marquisate destroyed my Yi family, leaving me bereft of kin. Could I still marry into your household? Call the Marquis and Madame father and mother? Address the second master as second uncle? Madame Jing forced a smile. Those were words spoken in anger that day. How could Yun Yang take them seriously? Your mother entrusted you to me on her deathbed and arranged your marriage to Liner. How could I defy the wishes of the deceased? If my mother knew that seeking you out back then was like a lamb walking into the tiger's den, she would surely still be filled with regret and resentment in her grave. Madam, in all this time, have you never dreamt of my mother coming to claim your life? Madame Zhang's face drained of color at my words, her lips trembling slightly. Miss Yi, Nanny Lu chimed in. You mustn't think such things of our mistress. She cherished your mother and you as if she'd give her very heart. The young master is the eldest son of the Marquis's household, such a noble and distinguished man. Yet the lady, without a second thought, betrothed you, an orphaned girl from a merchant family. I rose to my feet, brushing the folds of my skirt with a silk handkerchief, and decided to tear off the mask. There's no need to deceive me here. Jing Shilin has coveted Princess Yongjia for quite some time. I doubt even the stray cats and dogs roaming the capital are unaware he'll never marry me. The imperial consort summoned me to the palace tomorrow. I hear she intends to return the confiscated Yi family estate. Though our residence in the capital isn't grand, it can still hold my modest dowry. And these 800 taels of silver. I waved the IOU Jing Shilin wrote that day before Lady Zhang's eyes. The crown prince wrote it in his own hand, with several young masters from influential families present as witnesses. Madam, seize this moment to repay it all. Aunt Qian, the Empress consort's steward, is exceptionally skilled in managing finances. You witnessed it yourself that day. Tomorrow, I shall boldly borrow from her once more. Aunt Lu, with your capable hands, please see to it tonight that everything is packed neatly for the lady. If anything is lacking, go out before sunset to borrow what's needed. We cannot keep the palace attendants waiting tomorrow. At my mention of Princess Yongjia and my plan to move out with the dowry, Lady Zhang's face turned purple. She rose and sat again, her hand clenched so tightly around her handkerchief that the veins stood out. I averted my gaze. Still, Xingxia's days of ease were numbered. After much deliberation, I proceeded directly to the second household. Gloom hung heavy over the second residence. The second lady lay ill in bed, her young son wailing at her bedside, while the second daughter, Jing Shilan, wiped tears in the courtyard. Seeing me approach, Jing Shilan threw herself at me, sobbing and trying to tear at my clothes. Wailing, "What are you doing here? You've already sent my father to prison to face execution. How dare you show your face to my mother?" I hadn't come to see the second lady. I pushed her away and said slowly, "Your father didn't end up in prison because of me. Everyone in the capital knows who pushed him to take the blame. You're old enough to understand this much." Jing Shilan knew it was the Marquis's scheme, but she dared not accuse him. Instead, she vented her anger on me, her little face puffed up like a pufferfish, her eyes glaring at me with hatred. I pulled a gold hairpin inlaid with pearls and jade from my hair and held it before her. "Do you like it? The emperor bestowed this upon me after I rescued the imperial consort and the young prince during my last visit to the palace. I possess a box full of such hairpins, and they are commonplace within the palace walls, hardly a rare treasure." Jing Shilan is 2 years younger than me. In my previous life, she often visited my courtyard, exploiting her status as the Marquis's daughter to plunder my jewelry and garments. Back then, with all my kin gone and my spirit utterly broken, I cared nothing for such worldly things and let her have them. I never imagined this dim-witted second young miss would covet such trinkets. Yet even now, seeing this imperial pearl and jade hairpin, Jing Shilan instantly stopped her tears, her face aglow with envy. Her hands lifted and dropped repeatedly, as if about to snatch it away. I took the hairpin and placed it in her hair myself. She looked up at me in disbelief, trembling as she reached out to steady it. How lovely, I remarked. Lanner has reached the age of blossoming beauty now. Her grace is every bit as captivating as Xiao Yi's. Of course it is. Jing Shilan beamed with pride. Sister Xiao Yi is several years older than me. Speaking of Xiao Yi, I paused. All these years, she never rose in rank to aid the Marquis's household. This time, she couldn't even protect the second master. Truly, for us women, our beauty lasts but a few short years. Once it fades, we miss our chance to find someone worthy of our admiration. Lanner, tomorrow I'll be going to the palace to see the noble consort. Would you like to accompany me? I'll ask Her Majesty to let you stay with your sister for a few days. And may I? Her eyes lit up as she asked, her voice trembling. Of course. I nodded. The noble consort dislikes Xiao Yi because of the difficult childbirth. Though young, you're clever and perceptive. If you can assist Consort Xiao and win the noble consort's favor, not only will your father be spared, but no one in the household will dare bully your second branch family ever again. Jing Shilan let out a cheer. Forgetting I was still there, she dashed into her room to share the good news with her mother. Dogs fighting among themselves, it certainly won't disappoint me. At dusk, I helped Meower tidy the room in preparation for tomorrow's move. Suddenly, flute music drifted from outside the courtyard. It was not the cheerful, crisp melody of days past, but rather a lingering, plaintive sound, filled with sorrow and longing. Stepping out of the room, I saw Jing Shilin standing beneath the peach tree, clad in brocade robes, the very attire that had driven me mad with desire in my past life. This was the Changyuan Marquis' trump card against me, such a despicable move. Truly revolting. The season of peach blossoms had long passed. Now, lush green leaves clustered among the uneven branches, reflecting brilliant light in the evening sun. The tree remained. The flute remained. The man remained, only I had been reborn from the flames. For the first time, across lifetimes, I stepped forward and stood beside Jing Shilin, shoulder to shoulder. He set down his bamboo flute and sighed softly, yin yang. I did not look at him, but pointed toward the fiery sunset blazing in the western sky. We spoke simultaneously. See those crimson clouds? Do they not resemble the blood of my Yi clan? Shed in vain? Recalling past affection, might you return that day's IOU? As expected, a spineless coward. Reclaiming property confiscated by the authorities proved no simple task. Yet with Consort Chao advocating for this orphaned girl, she dispatched Aunt Qian to negotiate on my behalf. Soon, I completed the inventory formalities and moved into the Yi family's residence in the capital. The consort likely still cherished her affection for Consort Jing, keeping Jing Shilan in the palace to banter and play with Jing Xie. When Lady Jing learned of this, she smashed her room to pieces. Yet she could only put on airs and issue a warning to the second branch of the family. No other recourse remained. The confiscated portion of our family assets was largely returned intact. My dowry from the Changyuan Marquis' estate, under Aunt Qian's formidable influence, had its locks picked and was transferred from Lady Zhang's storeroom to the Yi residence. The 800 taels of silver Jing Shilin had signed for in the IOU, who knows which family he had begged this time, were actually repaid to me when I moved out. A wary suspicion stirred within me. I silently reminded myself that even a rotten ship has its nails. This family could not be underestimated. Summer arrived swiftly, bringing rising temperatures. The general's mansion hosted a 100-day celebration for their eldest grandson and granddaughter. Fang Zhongye personally delivered the invitation, extending an invitation for me to attend. My heart stirred upon seeing the date. In my past life, this very day marked the banquet held by the Prince of An's mansion for the son born to his concubine. My spirit had followed Jing Shilin, witnessing him converse warmly with Princess Yongjia by the pond in the Prince of An's estate. The two found perfect harmony, soon petitioning the emperor for a royal marriage decree. The Marquis of Changyuan's household thus embarked on its meteoric rise. Though the Changyuan Marquis's household was now a hollow shell, with Princess Yongjia as their external ally, they could rise again at any moment. When that time came, not only would I fail to reclaim the debt of over a dozen lives they owed me, but I would likely find myself trampled underfoot once more. To prevent any unforeseen complications, I arrived at the banquet early that evening. The general's wife and the young mistress were delighted to see me and led me to meet the twins. The two children were plump and fair-skinned, their little chubby hands soft yet firm as they tugged at my sleeves, as if they knew I was the one who had altered their fate, bringing them safely into this world. I gently held their little radish-like fingers, unable to suppress a smile. Lifting my gaze, I met the young general's burning stare. After just a few days apart, he fixed his eyes on me as if mesmerized, utterly afraid I might vanish. He paid no heed to the laughter around him. My face flushed hot, and I made an excuse to leave, taking a stroll instead. Unlike the residences of civil officials, the general's mansion featured expansive courtyards and open spaces, creating an airy, spacious feel. The general's wife, hailing from the water towns of Jiangnan, had also incorporated pavilions, terraces, and lakeside pavilions. I strolled slowly along the lake shore, carefully concealing my figure beneath the tree shadows. Sure enough, around the hour of the dog, the Yongjiao princess arrived, graceful and elegant, pausing at the central bridge to admire the scenery. I hurriedly summoned Fang Zhongye, who was following at a distance. Second young master. I dismissed the maids and servants, whispering to him, "I need your help. I'll distract the princess shortly. Prepare a set of white robes and find a way to get the Changyuan Marquis's heir to wear them. Then lead him this way." White? Fang Zhongye frowned. "I don't have any white garments." I raised an eyebrow at him. He leaned closer and whispered even lower. "Didn't Missy tell me not to wear white for 20 years? So I gave all my white clothes to Old Fang's niece at the gatehouse." I rolled my eyes inwardly. "Then please take one of Old Fang's nephew's white garments and have Jing Shilin change into it." Jing Shilin's build resembled Fang Zhongye's, though slightly more slender. His face was fair and gentle, though not as dashing as Fang Zhongye's, yet under the moonlight and water's reflection, he stood no less striking than any male favorite within Princess Jingy's residence. Seeing my solemn expression, a flicker of amusement crossed Fang Zhongye's eyes. Without asking why, he agreed and left. I stepped out of the shadows and headed toward the water-spanning bridge. Spotting someone approaching, the matron accompanying Princess Yongjia called out to me. I curtsied and explained my identity and background. The princess and her matron were indeed intrigued by me. Empress Chao's successful childbirth, achieved using my acupuncture technique, became widely known. By the time the twin sons were born at the general's residence, the purple continuity pill had gained fame throughout the capital's aristocratic circles. Childbirth is a perilous ordeal for women. Even someone as powerful as the Empress nearly lost her life to difficult labor. How could any woman who heard of the purple continuity pill's miraculous effects not be moved? I deliberately adopted an eager, money-hungry demeanor, proposing to write down the pill's formula and usage instructions for the princess, and to explain them to her in detail. Urged by her wet nurse, the princess led me to the front courtyard to borrow a room and writing implements from the young mistress. Halfway through writing the formula, I heard commotion outside. The princess sent someone to inquire and learned Princess Jingy had arrived. I suppressed my surging emotions, silently praying Princess Jingy would, as in my past life, favor secluded spots to seek out fair-clad, handsome men. After finishing the entire formula and carefully instructing the princess's wet nurse, I lingered for a while. Just as I stepped out of the courtyard, a dark figure suddenly leapt from a tree, grabbed my elbow, and dragged me away. I looked up to see Fang Zhongye. He pulled me around several corners before we reached a small bluestone building. The second-floor window stood wide open, facing the lake center not far away. We pressed silently against the window, watching a procession descend the covered bridge. Leading the procession was the resplendent Princess Genie, followed by a retinue of palace maids and matrons. Behind them, several burly servants dragged a figure whose head and face were hooded in a sack. Staggering forward, I glanced at Feng Zhongye beside me. He stood leaning against the pavilion pillar, arms crossed, watching me. His face was hidden in shadow, his expression unreadable. This dark blue robe fits you perfectly. When we return, I'll ask my elder sister-in-law to have the servants make several more sets. He murmured. Clever man. I replied indifferently, avoiding his piercing gaze in the darkness. Soon, the news that the heir to the Changyuan Marquis estate had been taken as a consort by Princess Genie spread like wildfire through the streets and alleys of the capital. When the Marquis sent men to demand his return, and when Lady Jing herself arrived by carriage, they were both driven away by the princess's servants. Had I remained at the Marquis's residence, Changyuan would surely have seized my belongings to offer as bribes to the Prince of In. Now, the most valuable item in the entire Marquis's estate was likely the bronze incense burner in the ancestral hall. Rumor had it they'd begun selling maidservants. How could they possibly scrape together money for bribes? After they'd floundered about like headless flies for several days, I took the initiative to pay a visit. Yin Yang. Madame Jing clutched me, weeping, all dignity gone, her face swollen and bare of makeup. She looked far older. Who would have thought true friendship reveals itself in adversity? Our Liner suffered such humiliation. Yet all our former acquaintances shut their doors. Only you, Yin Yang, remembered your old bond with Liner and came to help him. Madam, please be careful with your words. I hastened to distance myself. I have no connection whatsoever to the crown prince. Now that he has won the princess's favor, we must not make reckless accusations that could tarnish his reputation or cause the princess distress. Madame Jing let out a wail. Reputation? What reputation remains? My son has been utterly ruined by that wicked woman. Ugh. Noticing the tone of her words, Nanny Lu disregarded protocol and hastily covered Lady Jing's mouth. Hasn't the imperial consort spoken to you? I inquired with feigned concern. Alas! Sighed the second lady dramatically from her seat in the side hall. What Lady Xiuyi? She angered the noble consort the day before yesterday and was demoted to Lady Chongyi. She's no match for my Liner, who's even more favored by Her Majesty. Shut your mouth! Lady Jing roared. And you have the nerve to speak? If not for your daughter's treachery in the palace, framing her elder sister, how would our heir have been demoted? We're all family, shared glory, shared misfortune. Yuer's misfortune brings you no benefit. Madame Eyre adjusted the silk flower on her head with a cold smile. Glory? We've seen none. Misfortune? We've borne more than our share. You've incurred the noble lady's displeasure. Even my personal dowry was ransacked clean. Poor Liner hasn't found a match yet, bearing the title of a marquis's daughter in vain. Too poor to afford even a flower to wear. And our master still suffers in prison, facing execution at any moment. Her voice broke as she burst into tears. Liner acted out of filial devotion. Had her Marquis uncle been reliable? Had her sister, the imperial consort, been dependable? Would she have ever been forced to grovel before that noble lady in the palace? Your entire family monopolizes titles and privileges. Yet you target only our master to destroy. Shut your filthy mouth. You worthless woman. I'll tear that filthy mouth off. Madame Jing lunged forward, grappling with the second madam. The maids and nannies surrounding them rushed to intervene, pulling them apart in a flurry of hands. I sat composed in my chair, watching them tear each other apart like dogs. Once Lady Jing had calmed down, I dismissed the others and spoke earnestly. Madam, I do have two solutions. Would you trust them? Might you consider trying them? Having emptied the Marquis's estate, Lady Jing naturally distrusted me. Yet she was truly at her wit's end. And now she looked at me with tear-filled eyes. Nanny Lu hurried forward. Miss Yi, you're so noble. Please share your plan with us. Our mistress is heartbroken over the young master. If it means bringing him back safely, any method is acceptable. After silently reviewing my plan in my mind, I declared aloud, Princess Jingyi is the third prince's elder sister. While she may disregard others' words, she always gives the third prince's advice careful consideration. I've heard the third prince's consort recently expressed interest in purchasing a hot spring estate. Madam, perhaps you could lend your assistance? This could also provide an opportunity to slip a word to the third prince's consort. Madame Jing sprang to her feet, her eyes darting about in astonished disbelief. She had privately purchased a hot spring estate, entrusting the deed to Nanny Lu for safekeeping. Even the Marquis knew nothing of it. Even during the household's darkest days, she never sold it. Yet I had uncovered it. In my past life, as a wandering spirit, I overheard it within the manor. A woman like her, I would not allow her to retain a single shred of wealth. And one more thing. I took a sip of tea. The shopkeepers from my family once used a connection to deliver medicinal herbs to the princess's residence. I was too young at the time to recall which shop's manager it was. If the lady could find those departed managers and question them one by one, perhaps we could gain access to the residence to visit the young master. If the timing is right, we might even manage to bring him out and send him away. Madame Jing glared at me, her teeth clenched, eyes red as if they might bleed. Yes. I demand you retrieve my shopkeepers. Bring them back exactly as they were taken, not one missing. With the estate in this state, you still refuse to sell that hot spring estate? Now I simply want to see, between our last remaining assets and our only biological son, which will you choose? No one spoke. Having had my fill of the Ho family's disgraceful spectacle, I rose to take my leave. Days later, the old shopkeepers began arriving one after another to offer their regards. I knew Lady Jing had taken my words to heart. Though she understood my hatred for the Ho family's destruction of my household, she remained convinced of my deep affection for Jing Shilin. She believed that no matter how much I despised her and the Marquis, I would never harm the young master, that lingering feelings for him would prevent it. Where she got that confidence from, I couldn't say. Still, I hadn't entirely deceived her. When I was a wandering spirit, guarding Feng Zhongye in the princess's residence, I had seen the Li steward from our household come in to deliver medicine. Later, I learned that Li steward's brother-in-law was the chief steward of the princess's residence. Leveraging Li steward's connections, one late night, I slipped into Princess Jingyi's residence with Lady Jing and Nanny Lu, both disguised. Jing Shulin was far better off than Feng Zhongye had been back then. Yet even in the dim candlelight, his naked body was still covered in whip marks, bite marks, and blisters from burns. Before Lady Jing could even approach, she covered her mouth and began sobbing. Jing Shilin heard the sound and looked up, spotting us. He was so startled he yanked the bed curtain over himself, his face twisted with shame and fury. Your Highness, I said coolly. Long time no see. Too ashamed to face his family, Jing Shilin pulled the curtain over his head and face, refusing to meet us. From our first meeting, I knew him to be a man of lofty ideals, alas. Ideals as empty as the wind, devoid of any backbone. I had feared that lingering too long in the princess's household might soften his resolve, tempting him to curry favor and then exploit her support to advance his own ambitions. I'd been secretly anxious about this. Seeing his current state, he clearly hasn't come to terms with it yet. But I won't give him any more time. I had managerly escort the weeping Lady Jing and Nanny Lu out. Standing by the bedside, I spoke to him at length. Your Highness. I began slowly. Our infiltration was no easy feat. Now is not the time for shame. If you wish to leave the princess's residence, two options stand before you. The first is to depart with us immediately, leaving the city by nightfall and never returning to the capital. Though the Marquis of Changyuan's household may face some reprimand from the princess, it likely won't escalate to bloodshed. After a decade or so of turmoil, once the princess has vented her anger, the matter will likely be forgotten. Jing Shilin still didn't lift the bed curtain covering his face, muttering gloomily. The other option? The other option requires the crown prince to endure some hardship. I've learned Princess Jenny recently has a batch of crucial items she wishes to transport out of the capital without alerting others. Our Yi family may lack other skills, but we're quite capable of discreetly moving hundreds of crates of medicinal herbs across the land and waterways, north and south, without drawing attention. If your highness could flatter her a bit, slip this proposal to the princess, and volunteer to handle the task. You could not only leave the princess's residence openly but also use the opportunity to depart the capital for a while. The mansion has already sent an estate to the third prince's residence. After you leave, we'll send 2 more handsome youths to the princess. 2 aren't enough, 4 aren't enough, 8. By the time you return, the princess will surely have forgotten the past. Jing Shilin listened, silent for a long while. I wasn't in a hurry. I tilted my head back, counting the rafters on the ceiling as I waited for him. The crown prince of Changyuan Marquis clearly doesn't hold the princess's favor as much as General Fong does. The room where Fong Zhongye was once bound, even the beams were made of golden thread nanma wood. When it burned, the scent was like medicine and fruit. So very pleasant. After about the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, Jing Shilin began asking detailed questions about the Yi family's medicine deliveries to the capital. I held nothing back, telling him everything. As he left, he murmured, Yun Yang, when I'm free from this prison, I won't let you down. Thankfully, his face was covered, so he didn't see me stagger and nearly fall upon hearing those words. He was overthinking it. I didn't want him, I only wanted his life. 2 days later, the Crown Prince Jing sent word through an intermediary, requesting Manager Li enter the mansion through the back gate to discuss the shipment arrangements. The time was set for the 3rd night. The Yi family arranged 12 carts for transporting medicinal herbs. At the hour of the ox, they stopped at the rear gate of the princess's residence. Jing Shilin and one of the princess's personal eunuchs were responsible for escorting the goods out of the capital. The princess's cargo was mixed among the Yi family's dozens of boxes of medicinal herbs, traveling by water to avoid suspicion. That night, I accompanied the convoy dressed as a man. The frail Jing Shilin and a plump, fair-skinned eunuch directed the mansion's laborers in moving the crates. The princess's residence lay shrouded in darkness, eerily silent as if deserted. In the blackness, the laborers moved with lightning speed. Each wore sleek dark garments, sleeves and trouser legs tightly bound. Their arms were muscular and powerful, their footsteps silent. Once all the boxes were loaded and secured, Jing Shilin and the eunuch took their seats at the front and rear of the carriage. The laborers formed an orderly line behind them. The eunuch gave a low command to depart. I had been waiting for this moment. I pulled a fire starter from my bosom, lit the cloud-piercing arrow Fong Zhongye had given me, and flung it skyward. The arrow pierced the sky, its bright light and loud crack startling everyone to look up. Jing Shilin and the eunuch leapt directly from their carriage. Countless torches instantly flared up around the princess's residence, where shadows lay thick as overlapping trees. Soldiers stood packed tight, brandishing torches and weapons. At the head, mounted on a tall steed, the young General Fong Zhongye sat with stern resolve, pointing at the 12 carriages now illuminated in stark detail by the flames. He commanded, "Search! Halt!" The plump eunuch shrieked. "Who are you? Do you know these belong to the princess's residence? Who dares touch them?" Fong Zhongye remained unflinching, motionless. and the soldiers before him showed no sign of halting. One line encircled the laborers trailing behind the carriages, while another swiftly advanced, smashing open every crate just secured atop the wagons. Letters, banknotes, land deeds, gold and jewels, jade and brocade. The eunuch continued his shrieks as the laborers began struggling to break free. Lights flickered on throughout the princess's residence, and a murmur of voices swelled from its depths. I seized the chaos to rush inside, pushing through the clash of blades and spears, groping my way toward the ninth carriage. Its boxes too had been torn open. Exquisitely patterned brocades lay spread across the night, illuminated by the firelight, dazzlingly splendid. Both hands outstretched, I frantically yanked out bolts of fabric. Upon reaching the second layer, a bright yellow robe adorned with 5-clawed dragon patterns emerged. Time seemed to freeze in that instant, the cool autumn night turning as cold as ice. The eunuch lay prostrate on the ground, his face deathly pale. The conscripts captured by soldiers slumped in defeat. Someone, Fang Zhongye shouted, go immediately to the minister of the imperial clan and the minister of justice. Princess Jinyi has plotted rebellion, the evidence is here. Seal the main rear gate and all side and corner gates of the princess's residence. No one is to leave the compound. Squad after squad of soldiers armed with spears poured through every gate of the princess's residence. Wails and cries erupted instantly in the dark night, while nearby households frantically locked their doors in panic. That night, Fang Zhongye and I altered the fate and destiny of many. In a past life, Princess Jinyi had conspired with the third prince to rebel. Sensing the plot might be exposed, the third prince swiftly entrusted Princess Jinyi with incriminating correspondence linking him to frontier generals and influential court ministers, along with vast wealth intended for his eventual comeback. Princess Jinyi dispatched her men to intercept a merchant caravan leaving the capital. They concealed all these items among the caravan's cargo, transporting them out of the city for deep hiding. Even when the third prince was betrayed by his own men and imprisoned by imperial order for interrogation at the imperial clan temple, the most damning evidence remained elusive. Princess Jinyi thus evaded this colossal catastrophe, while the third prince's entire household was sentenced to lifelong confinement. Princess Jinyi leveraged his hidden wealth to amass even greater power and influence. All this could be concealed from the emperor, concealed from the world, but not from me, a ghost lurking in the shadows. I secretly investigated the caravan that had transported Princess Jinyi's boxes. I discovered the caravan's background was unremarkable, with no ties to the princess's residence or any noble house. Presumably, the matter was too urgent for the princess to make meticulous arrangements. Given this, my Yi family's medicinal transport caravan could also assist. My ultimate goal was to implicate the Marquis of Changyuan's residence in this affair. Last time, I sacrificed the second master to bear the blame. This time, your entire household is ensnared. Let's see how you escape this. The Changyuan Marquis' heir personally transported evidence of treason. The Marquis' wife, allied with the third prince's household, gifted her hot spring estate to the third prince's consort to facilitate his affairs. The Changyuan Marquis' household participated in the third prince and Princess Jinyi's treason plot. The evidence is irrefutable. The entire household shall be executed. My family, through Fang Zhongye's mediation, also escaped unscathed. That's the good thing about this general, you tell him what to do, and he does it without question. Autumn's chill had deepened. The shivering wind whipped the treetops, and half-yellow, half-withered leaves, like soulless butterflies, fluttered down in a flurry. My last visit to the execution ground was in late spring, when grass was green, willows lush, and orioles sang. Only I knelt on the chopping block, bearing a mountain of unjust accusations, trembling with dread as I awaited the executioner's blade. Now I stood at the execution ground once more, watching as the entire Changyuan Marquis household, shackled in prison carts, approached slowly. The Marquis of Changyuan, the second master, and the heir, their hair disheveled and faces covered, looked utterly wretched. Lady Zhang and the second lady had long since shed the airs of noble women, clutching their chains and wailing pitifully. Standing by the roadside, I watched. Lady Zhang spotted me through the prison cart and suddenly her eyes flashed. Yi Yun! She screamed. Yi Yun! How could you be so heartless? After all the years of affection between me and your mother, after I never treated you harshly, you brought ruin upon my entire household. You vicious little woman. You rotten-hearted slut. Hearing this, the Marquis of Changyuan and the second master, realizing I was present, also began to shout curses. I stepped closer and said aloud to Lady Zhang, "Do you know what my parents said before they died?" Madame Zhang froze. I added, "I didn't know then, but I know now." Their words must have been identical to what you and the Marquis are saying now. Madame Zhang's face collapsed, filled with despair and sorrow. As the prison cart clattered past, she twisted her head impossibly, screaming hoarsely. I paid her no further heed. Feng Zhongye had appeared beside me unnoticed, clad in a dark blue, round-collared, narrow-sleeved robe, his bearing bold and spirited. "Aren't you afraid?" he asked. "I am," I replied. "But I must come." He took hold of my elbow, just as he had that night in the general's residence. At the third hour of noon, the executioner bellowed his command, flung down the execution token, vengeance was mine. The next day, I carried offerings to tend my family's graves. The Yi family burial ground lay outside the capital. After the case was overturned, I purchased a new plot nestled against mountains and near water. On an auspicious day, I had them relocated there, so my grandparents, parents, uncles, aunts, and siblings might rest more peacefully. Kneeling before the graves, I recounted everything I'd done these past days. I detailed the shopkeeper's situation and the shop's affairs with thorough clarity. I also truthfully reported the just punishment meted out to the Marquis of Changyuan's mansion and Li the imperial pharmacist. After today, I bowed before my parents' graves. Their daughter would make her mark in the world through the cauldron of medicine. Never again would the Yi family be bullied or schemed against. Just as I wiped away my tears, I heard someone calling my name. Feng Zhongye stood nearby, saying, "It's getting late. Let me escort you home." "General, what brings you here?" I asked in surprise. "I went to your residence to bid farewell. Mir told me you'd come to pay respects to your ancestors." "Bid farewell? Where are you heading?" "General, my father bears battle wounds and must raise the children my eldest brother left behind. I've petitioned His Majesty to take my father's place guarding the northern pass. I'll be leaving the capital soon." "When do you depart?" I asked. "Yi Yin will certainly see you off to repay the general's kindness." "Tomorrow at dawn, North Gate." I nodded, committing the time and place to memory, then walked side by side with him toward the carriage. "What are your future plans, Miss Yi?" he inquired again. "Plans?" I pondered. The purple continuity pill is now widely known. I intend to rename it Yi Family Purple Continuity Pill. In the future, I'll dedicate myself to crafting medicine for all women-bearing daughters. I'll also properly manage our family pharmacy, ensuring the Yi lineage endures for generations. "You truly intend to marry for the sake of bearing an heir?" "I'm the sole heir to my family." He laughed heartily. My face flushed slightly as I stammered. That was merely a hasty excuse to avoid the emperor's arranged marriage. "You should focus on guarding the border. The purple continuity pill is passed down only to daughters, not sons. I'll likely take on a few female apprentices." Feng Zhongye paused, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. The purple continuity pill's greatest value lies in its exclusive efficacy for blood relatives. Even the most powerful or wealthy would find it useless if seized. "Miss Yi, all women in the world, whether poor or noble, Well, thank you. I shook my head. They should have the right to live from birth. When will you visit North Gate? He asked suddenly. I don't know. I replied with a smile. Very well. Then this general shall await the day you bring the Yi family pharmacy and the Yi clan's purple continuation pill to North Gate. His smile was truly captivating. Watching him, I couldn't help but let the corners of my mouth turn upward. He led his horse as we walked slowly along the path. Talking. I had never felt so utterly at ease as I did in that moment. The golden sun dipped westward. Night's hues layered and spread from east to west like a path toward the sunset glow, calm and distant. One thought brings joy. Another brings obsession. Next year. I think I'll go see Big One. The end.